Okay, can I call the meeting to order here? Dale, do you want to give us the invocation?
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for every day of life. We thank you, Father, for the health that we enjoy and the freedom we have to be here. We pray for wisdom as we listen to the petitions before us tonight. We pray, Father, for integrity as we apply the ordinances and the consideration of variances to them. We ask you, Father, to watch over us in everything we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, so we got a roll call.
Commissioner Mike Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Randy Downs,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Dale Gold,
Here.
Vice Chair David Rhines,
I'm here.
Chair Billy Blackburn.
Okay, looks like the first order of business is the approval of minutes from our last meeting, February 27th, 2020. Get a motion to approve.
I move to approve the February 27 minutes.
I second that.
Okay, first order of business. Let's call for a vote. Sorry.
Commissioner Mike Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Randy Downs,
Yes.
Commissioner Dale Gold,
Yes.
Vice Chair David Rhines.
Yes. Okay, now we'll move to the first order of business. Consideration for BOA variance to code 159.19. Consider request by Texoma Manufacturing for a variance of 159.19 for property located at 1400 West Main Street. So, want to give us some additional details here?
Certainly. The applicant came in for a sign permit and was wanting to put in a 6x12 digital sign to replace an existing sign at First United Bank located at the corner of Main and Washington. Staff is unable to approve that permit due to the sign size. Staff can only approve one that is 32 square feet. So for that type of sign, which is why we are here this evening. So therefore that's up to you guys to decide if a variance is in to be able to approve the variance. The applicant's here if you guys have any further questions about that. He did, whenever he submitted his application, within the packet, you'll see kind of an aerial view of where they're wanting to put the sign. The applicant submitted some information with what the sign will look like, some measurements for you, and also some area signs or some signs in the area of what are kind of existing right now. And also included the sign permit, so you could have some details about what was submitted to staff. So if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer them, and the applicant is also here to answer questions.
I'll start with the first question. It's for the city. What's the background on the rule as far as the sign size? I mean, is this an archaic rule or is this something that?
It could be, to be honest, it's something I usually let our building official handle everything that comes in as far as signs go. Our sign ordinance is something that we are currently looking at. Right now, we're doing some very, very small updates within the sign ordinance. Long term, we are going to be looking at it for some updates. Some will be some significant updates, most likely. But we haven't gotten that far yet. We're going to be doing an update to the comp plan, finishing that first, and then we'll be doing some major ordinance updates down the road. But according to some talks that we've had, some sizes probably would change. That particular one, I'm not sure. We just have to kind of see what other cities are doing that are our size, kind of what that looks like. and stuff like that. So we haven't gotten that far as how archaic that is or isn't, to be honest.
Danielle,
Yes.
I'm sure this predates you, so you're innocent, but how did Hoyt get a 6x12 sign approved and CVS get a 5x14 approved? There's nothing in the records to,
I'm unsure, to be honest. A lot of it could have been before I got here, to be honest, and most of it probably was.
well, I'm sure it was.
Are those your
Right.
signs, Scott? Those other ones?
Yeah, and I can answer a lot of those questions for you if you'd like.
I was gonna say, he's probably done some of those signs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things,
Go
if you don't mind. The ordinance over the years, the city's taken ordinances from this city that they liked and some from this city, they meshed them together. So in the past, the city has had a sign ordinance where on page 4, it said you can't do this, and on page 7, it said you could. So as a sign fabricator and installer, we have learned our way around the sign ordinances to see what you can and can't do. And so when I applied for this sign, I got turned down. I said, well, I know it's in, they said, well, we have a new ordinance. I said, oh, okay. So what's the opportunities to come and ask for a variance? But one thing I wanted to point out, a couple of things, is that you can look, and I can go into a couple of things. Okay, first, I gave you a couple of examples, several examples of what signs look like. All right, a 4x8 is the maximum size you can do on a digital sign right now for the ordinance. And there's a 4x8 sign at Cool Cars out in West Durant. There's a picture of it. You know, it's a small little portable building, little sign. And then if you look in the ordinance, there's an ordinance for the size of a building sign on the side of a building can only be, I think, 15% of the size of the building. And that's to keep you from putting a unproportional looking sign on a building. You know, you wouldn't want the whole side of your sign to be, of your building to be a sign. So that makes sense. And I would just ask that you would apply that thought and reasoning to a digital sign. First United Bank is a 3-story building. And it looks like that you could put a bigger sign in front of a 3-story building than you could in a little 10 by 10 shop building sign. And if you look across the street, and I would not be in favor, if I sit on your board, of somebody that wanted to put a big, huge sign in front of a little bitty business if it didn't go on here. But I don't think this sign will be an eyesore. If you put a 4x8 sign, especially as tall as that is, you wouldn't be able to read it. It just doesn't make sense. And I want to read, and there's several examples of some 4x8 signs and bigger signs across the street. If you go down First Street, First Baptist just installed a sign that's 5x11. I think I said it was 5x11. It's almost a 6x12. Then it doesn't look big and obtrusive or anything like that. But I want to read the purpose of our sign ordinance to you and give you kind of a thought about why I think we should be able to get this variance. It says this ordinance, this chapter provides standards for on and off-site signs. So I believe you do have to have a standard, say this is the size of a sign, and then you look at it and see if there's an applicable difference of the situation. But it says to safeguard life, health, property, safety, and public welfare while encouraging creativity, variety, and compatibility and enhance the city's image. The provision of this chapter are intended to encourage signs that are responsive to the aesthetics and character of their particular location, adjacent buildings, uses, and the surrounding neighborhood. Signs should be compatible and integrated with the building's architecture design, and we should recognize that signs are a necessary form of communication and provide flexibility within the sign review approval process to allow for unique circumstances and creativity. And I think that's what we have here. You have an ordinance that says you can't allow anything bigger than 32 square feet, which is a good starting point. And then you have a 3-story building that it just doesn't make sense to put that small sign up that high. The bigger the sign is, the taller it is, the smaller it looks. So I think it's within everything on the scope and purpose of this ordinance, except it's just not applicable to that size of the building. Everywhere else in Durant, there's you mentioned the Hoyt sign. We got that permitted within the That's been 4 or 5 years ago, but it was allowed in the ordinance at that time. And it's not too, it's the same size sign in front of a single story building. And this is going to be taller and in front of a bigger building. So I think,
Is this basically the diagram that you're proposing
Yeah.
to put?
yeah, we're going to replace, there's an original an existing, this is the existing picture of what they have. So we're going to replace this space with the same size space. We're going to get rid of all of this, which this is 12 foot right now. That's like, this whole structure right here is 5 by 12 foot, and we're replacing it with a 6 by 12 digital sign. In front of, there's a 6 by 12 in front of Clay Eye Clinic right there by the school. That's a 5 by 10 at Northwest Heights. There's probably only maybe 2 or 3 4 by 8 signs that I can think of in Durant. So if you can think of, something, there's 5 by 10s at First United Bank. There's it's 4 by 8 is really the only one. I guess there's a 4 by 8 on the side of the Texoma Federal Credit Union in Washington on that little building.
Yes. Danielle, has anyone wrote in or called in to your office opposing of this, or is anybody here opposing of this? Has anybody?
No, no one has wrote in or called about this, and I will add another note that this sign ordinance that we're working with now is only 2 years old.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. Part of our job on the Board of Adjustment is to enforce a specific state statute that grants eligibility for variances from ordinances. And the first line of that statute says that in order to be eligible for a variance, that the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would need to create an unnecessary hardship. What's the unnecessary hardship in this case?
For old people without glasses to see. It's just, they're spending an incredible amount of money on a sign to market their business, and just the size of it is small and hard to read.
Okay. And then the last line of that statute is that the variance, if granted, would be the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. What do you think would be the minimum size of sign in this space?
Well, and to make it aesthetically pleasing and to adhere to the purpose of the ordinance, I think a 6 by 12, if you can look in the picture, the color picture, you can see it either. It's a little bit smaller in the upper sign. It looks architecturally correct. I think I wouldn't put anything bigger up than that, and I wouldn't put anything smaller. If you're gonna, I wouldn't go just a few inches bigger. So I think that would be the minimum size that you would go up to alleviate the issue.
That's all my questions.
So do we want to run through the 4? Okay. So Mike,
We covered 1 and 4,
yeah,
I guess,
we
just now.
just talked about 1 and 4. Second one is the conditions are peculiar to the particular piece of property involved. I think my comments on that, I guess, would be Scott's reference to a 3-story building. There's not a lot of those in Durant to begin with. Any other comments on that?
I agree.
okay.
It's peculiar to that particular property.
Third one is relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purposes and intent of the ordinance or the comprehensive plan. Do you have any concerns with the comprehensive plan? Okay. Any other questions?
I move that we approve the request.
I second that.
Okay, we want to go vote?
Commissioner Mike Davis,
Nay.
Commissioner Randy Downs,
Yes.
Commissioner Del Gold,
Yes.
and Vice Chair
Yes.
David Ryan, sorry.
Okay. We ready to move on to the next? Yes, sir. Okay, sorry about that. Next topic is consider a request by Redline Builders LLC for a variance to 157.032 regarding the front setback for property located on Gale Farrell Drive, west of North First Avenue.
This property, they came in early February to do a lot split, to divide this into 4 lots. Those 4 lots do meet the standards for R1 lots, which that medium square footage is, the bare minimum requirements is 70 by 100, so 7,000 square feet. What the current setback is for the front setback is 30 feet for a normal setback. For the front setback, the rear setback is 20, and the sides is 5 foot. This section of roadway on Gil Farrell also has a highway right of way that fronts it, which is an additional, it's 120 total feet across. So it's 60 feet on that particular side. And the whole reason it's there is because it's so close to the Highway 78 that's there. So that's kind of if you want to call it an oddity. The applicant is asking for a variance for a minimum of 15 to the full 30 feet of the setback. That is the information I have at the time. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. If the applicant's also here, if you have any questions for him as well.
So just to clarify, the request is variable. It could be 15 feet, it could be 30.
Yes, that's what the applicant has.
Okay.
And I imagine that if you guys had another number that you wanted to throw out, that they'd be willing to listen at this point. I'm not sure what all that they had in mind. Whenever I've talked with the applicant, they just want to make the house look what is similar to what is in the current area. We did have a couple phone calls about it, and they also agree that they want the houses that are built in that area to look similar to what would be in that area. So they don't want something small or something that would not fit. So they agree. And I believe that was part of the problem, that whenever they started building the house plans, that they would be over that setback just a little bit. How much over, I don't know. We have not seen the house plans at this point. So, but they came to us with concern.
To your knowledge, is there any future plans to widen Gale Farrell another 60 feet?
I don't know that. I've not talked with our public works crews.
It's along a section line, is that right?
Gale Farrell, I'm not sure if that is a section line, but due to its proximity, because if you look just right next to the property, right next to it on the survey, that's lessened by another 10 feet. So it's only 50 feet there and then 60 feet right on those properties. So that's additional 10 feet there. That's the highway right of way.
Okay, but it is a city street. It's not a state highway.
Correct. Gale Farrell is a city street, but with it being so close to 78, that's why anything that has close proximity to a state highway, they extend it the state highway right away.
Kind of in that vein, has anyone within city staff or management raised any concerns about if this variance were granted, that it could cause any hardships later in terms of expansion?
I haven't heard of any, no.
Okay.
No.
So, yeah. Sure.
We also have an illustration kind of showing kind of the reason why we're asking for this, because concerned with that's a pretty pretty busy road right there at Gulf Barrel. So in order to build a house to keep it safe, we need to do a courtyard garage. So that puts the garage completely in front of the house. So that way that they can back out and pull onto Gulf Barrel instead of backing out onto it. So that sets the garage completely in front of the house. So another 10, 15 feet would make the backyard a whole lot better. I have an illustration that would kind of show that.
I'd love to see it.
Here is, this is Gulf Barrel as we're sitting right now. And what our concerns were was to be able to have them pull out straight onto the road and not be backing out. But as we said, with the, right now the property line starts 60 feet from the center of Gulf Barrel, and then we have another 30 to come back right here. So that puts, this driveway right here will be 101 foot long. The lot's only 115 feet itself. As it sits, our backyard is so
They just
tight.
left you a 12-foot.
Yes, sir. That's what we're concerned with, because Gulf Barrel's a pretty busy road. A lot of people probably are gonna want to have that backyard just a little bit too, so. That's,
So what you're actually asking for is just take another 15 feet of this and put it back here.
yes, sir. Not increasing the lot or encroaching on any of this. We would just, if we could have 15 feet right there, this would add that, you'd have a pretty good sized backyard. Make it a little more.
Yeah. What type of home are you looking to do?
I have
And I take it that there's 4 there.
This is the house right here, and this is the house I have drawn on track 3.
This is what you got drawn here. Okay.
Yes, sir. And this garage is sitting right out there on the fence. So, a lot of those houses are back straight out. The garages, there's about half of them will be, inside the floor plan, but because of this, to make it good and safe, it's gonna stick completely.
Yes.
And the depth of the house is only around 36, 38 feet, so it's actually pretty shallow, depth wise.
So this keeps it, I probably should speak into the microphone, but I want to say, does this keep the house as far as where it's geographically situated in line with the rest of the neighborhood?
Yes.
We're saying this keeps it from being the aberration and it keeps it the norm.
Correct.
Okay.
If you go to Prestonwood right there, that's flat.
Here's the neighborhood. Right?
I actually put Prestonwood in.
I don't know, it's a lot of papers, bear with me. But you see right here where they're coming off of Prestonwood, right here we have a 50-foot setback and this one has 60. So as far as us impacting everything, and this house, since it's from the side, I believe it's probably 15 or 20 foot off this sideline. So this would really put us about right in line.
I see why it's a weird piece of property. It's angled differently and everything else.
Yes, sir. And there's just a whole lot of ground right there. And with that 30-foot setback, what it really puts a long ways back in there.
What's the setback here, first of all?
This is.
50 from the center, yeah.
50, and where you at, 70?
This one is 60. Yes. Plus, with that 30, we have to go 30 foot back from that point. So that's putting it, in the realm of 90 feet. So it's a pretty long driveway.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. You good? You need to look in it. No, I think I've seen it. I'm good.
Here's your plan.
I need to ask if there's some concern that anybody's called in. I always like to know if there is some concern or if there's anybody here that would like to speak to.
Kevin Keener, I live on the west side of this property, and my concern was I don't believe there's any undue hardship. It's R1 requirements, lot dimensions, setbacks, everybody else got to follow them. And so I don't know that, and with this property they can adjust the size of their lots. They need to spread out more room. They could have 3 instead of 4. They could alleviate some, I know that's not as economical, it doesn't make as much money, but I just don't think there's a hardship. And the width of the road easement, doesn't affect what's inside their property, their lot size. So that's my concern. I don't think it ought to be, I don't like it being close to the street. As you go down Gale Farrell, things are off the street pretty good ways. And the difference with Prestonwood is when you turn into Prestonwood, those are side setbacks, not front setbacks.
Right.
That are close to Gale Farrell.
Absolutely.
And they're
Mike, are
not
you-
facing the
Are
street.
you familiar with Prestonwood?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure. am.
So
so
that's my concern, that
I don't know
No,
where,
I'm sold on this one. I'm good.
I don't know where you live, so I didn't know if you knew, but,
Over in Heritage Crossing. I'm on the other side of town.
okay.
I just don't see the undue hardship. That's not,
Okay.
I don't know why it would be necessary in this case. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm for this one. Okay.
If we do get the 15 foot, we'll still be 75 foot to the front of that house from on that setback. So we're still a long ways off Gale Farrell.
Right.
Okay, I guess one thing when I considered it, the Prestonwood, make sure I understand it right, 60. And that is 70, so there's a 10-foot difference between those two,
50 and 60. is
50 and 60, so there's a 10-foot.
10-foot difference. But the other thing is, we're talking front setback on these versus side setback on the house that Mr. Keener lives in. His house faces west. And so the side, I drove out there and looked, it looks like the side of his home would line up maybe with what they're looking for the front setback on these. We're not talking front setback to front setback. We're talking front setback to side setback.
I guess where I was going with that, and it may not be considered, but if there's 10 feet difference there, would 10 foot make more sense?
For the backyard, if you guys want the property to sell as well as what it should for what they're gonna build, they need a backyard for somebody to buy the property to, utilize other than each 12 piece is what, I mean, initially, what they need more room in the back also.
And also, like I said, fit the area. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a nice home in that area that matches everything. And still be sensible on our setbacks, not be 90 foot off. We're gonna have plenty of driveway for somebody to pull in, back out. We're gonna make sure that there's no hazard, anybody getting back on the road or anything like that.
What's the square footage of these homes that you're?
Just right at, that house right there is 2,000, it's over 2,000. So I think the other three are similar, they're all similar, it's 1,900 to 2,000 square foot.
Okay, let's go through our 4 questions. First one is the application of the ordinance's particular piece of property would create an unnecessary hardship or result in exceptional practical difficulties.
Well, to some extent, the angle of the property is different than the adjacent properties, which creates a different scenario for the building of the house. It seems like to me, but that's just my thought.
Any comments?
He's the lawyer.
The conditions are peculiar to this particular piece of property involved. That's kind of the angle you were going on that first one there, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm just going to reiterate. So they're asking between 15 and 30, right? Is our original request?
30 is code. So what they're asking for is a variance from 30 to 15.
Okay.
That's what I understood. 30 would,
You can either do 10.
And that's where I would get to with question number 4, the
Right.
minimum necessary to
Okay.
ease the
Do you have a,
hardship.
do you have an opinion on a 10-foot variance back there? Yeah, does that change your opinion? Yes.
Well, I tell you, my concern is that if with just giving a blanket, you can change it, then plans can change.
Yeah.
What would be awesome if we could actually, and I'm not saying anything about their intentions. I don't know any of that. Just from my experience and being a part of city and the things that go on is you get a zoning for something or you get a permission for something and then plans change and do something else. So that's why I was asking Danielle if it was possible to do like a planned unit development. If it was something that you could say, these are the 4 houses we're going to build. This is going to be the setback. This is how they're going to set. This is going to be the garage. And you actually have the plans. You could say, we approve this and that's what gets built. So I guess the biggest concern is giving them permission to do that and then it changing. So I'm fine. I mean, if they need 10 feet, I mean, I get it to make the project work for them. I would just hope that that was the project that we ended up with.
The only difference with them is if they give them 10 feet, that's all they get, right? So if they give them 10 feet, they have to make that work.
But
There isn't a,
but they're not giving them 10 feet for that specific house plan.
right.
They
right,
can-
not
they can-
giving them for that specific- that's the item.
Does that go with the applicant or with the property?
That goes with that property.
Only for that property.
Okay, so that's that's my point.
Yeah.
Is you give the variance, the property sells,
Yeah.
somebody else comes in and they take advantage of the setback. That's the scenario that I would like to keep from happening. So, go ahead.
You're the closest one to this. Okay, so what detriment, if it was granted at 15 or 10, whatever, how does that detrimentally affect you and your property?
I don't know of a direct detriment to me and my property. I don't have an answer for that. It is going to be off the road, apparently a good bit. My concern probably comes in more is aesthetics mainly, is wanting to look good, and on the planning commission as well. And we start changing making these variances, and I just don't know about the trickle down.
I understand.
so-
I understand, but in this case, you're directly impacted. That's why I wanted to ask
Right.
you.
Yeah, I want it to match, and I guess the first grind on it is they determined their lot size and then said, this lot size is not right.
Well, the depth is, they don't have any control over the depth.
Right.
I mean,
I get that.
If they did 3 versus 4, it's still the same depth. That's not going to help anything. If they put a front entry as opposed to doing the garage in the court type setting, it would make a difference there because the garage wouldn't be in front of the house. They could do that. But aesthetically, having that side entry coming in probably is going to look better in your neighborhood
I
than
agree with
than having a house with a front entry.
I agree with that.
So, it's kind of a two-way thing.
Yeah. I guess it goes back to the experience I've had where you approve something and then the plans change and you don't get what you originally approved. That's my concern.
And you're exactly right. That could happen. I mean, the variance goes with the property. It's not tied to these plans.
I wish there was a mechanism that could attach it to a specific project with the plans, the layout. I mean, that would be great. So but that's my concern is that plans change,
Okay,
if they change.
okay. But you don't see any detrimental effect impacting you as they have presented it.
I do not. No.
Thank you.
The setback is different for Prestonwood and this property because of the highway. Is that what I understood?
The Prestonwood addition, the only difference is, as far as it is reference to Gil Farrell, is it's 50 foot, but then you have 5 foot. So the side setback is 5 foot, so you only have 55 foot from that, and then 60 foot, and then 30 foot. So you have front setback versus side setback, if that makes sense. That's the only difference is front and side setback. You have a 10-foot difference from from the frontage, from that right of way. That's the only other
Yeah,
difference.
the 10 feet is, I guess, is what I was referencing.
I mean, we're talking about a street easement. We're not talking about setbacks off your property line.
Right.
There's no difference setback off your property line in Prestonwood, in any addition in town. They're the same. Yeah. It's just a road easement may be wider, like El Farrell Road easement is wider than Prestonwood street easement. But as far as the setback from the property line,
There's no 30 in the front, 20 in the rear, and 5 on the sides.
It's a little bigger than that.
Okay.
Does that help a little bit?
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Did we get through all 4 of those? I guess you
I think
you were
so.
talking about number 4, Mike.
Mike?
Yeah, no, well, we covered 4 just now, I guess, and the first 2 are similar, and I guess the middle one there is relief if granted would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purposes of the ordinance. And, you know, I'm not convinced that granting this would cause any harm to the public good.
Before we move to a vote, do we want to decide on how big of a variance that we're willing to
I
vote
think
for?
we have to decide that. Danielle, do you know, as a matter of procedure, is this yes or no to the request? Are we allowed to stipulate things like we grant it only insofar as 10 feet? We are allowed to stipulate?
Yes, you can sit there and say, you can say, yes, we can stipulate, we'll grant this as long as.
They don't
it's
have to
10 feet.
redraft their request with more clarity.
Right,
Okay.
right, yeah. You can say, we'll grant to 10 feet, and that's the most we're willing to grant, or whatever
Or
that,
15,
whatever
or-
that,
okay.
right, whatever that magic number is.
Situation because of that. There's so much room.
What the variance is. The variance of the setback would be instead of 30 feet.
I could be convinced for as far as 15 feet. But
Or do we have, I'm asking you, can we change the 15? I mean, that's the application. Can we,
what Danielle's telling us is we can.
We can, and we can have the applicants state whether they agree with that or not. And then that can be their way of agreeing to that change. And then that can be that saying, and what I'd also do with your motion is also saying what that setback will be.
Mhm.
So if it's a 10-foot variance, so that setback then would be 20 foot instead of 30 foot. So that way everything is crystal clear and there's no confusion. Or 15-foot variance or 5-foot variance, whatever that variance is.
But that said, I think I still would prefer staying consistent with the original request at 15. But that's just my opinion. I think we can set it at 10 if we want to.
okay.
Whatever the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship is for that unique piece of property.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, what's your name again? Yeah, Kevin Keener, I know that. I'm sorry, he just lost me. I think he has some valid concerns about the trickle down of the property, you know. I think what we have to decide on this one is this particular property, you know, does it warrant, it's, you know, obviously the variance on it. And for me, my suggestion is that, you know, the 10-foot is the glaring difference to me between the properties that meet each other. I would suggest that we go with the 10 feet. And we can ask the applicant if they're willing to consider that as an option.
Okay. So if I can request officially that the minutes reflect that the present party assented to the idea of 10 feet.
Would you like to vote on 10 feet?
I move to grant a 10-foot variance.
Which would make the setback.
Which would make the setback 20 feet instead of 30 feet.
Okay, want to call for a vote?
Commissioner Mike Davis.
Yes. Was
Commissioner
there a
Ray-
second? Did we have a second?
No.
We need a second.
Sorry.
Do we need to discuss it some more?
my only question, I guess, is Mr. Keener's observation. You know, if Mr. Hart could give him his personal assurance that they plan and will pursue doing this just like it's been presented and not change.
Mr. Go, you know my word, my word. So,
Well, I'm wanting you to,
well, Mr. King, yeah. We're trying to match skill permit, so we sure you do. We're not gonna build any junk or whatever, trying to build something.
It's not that, it's just I've had a lot of experience with
I understand.
getting change.
Right, but we're,
So they can understand.
that's not us, though. I understand that's not us. So, I assure you that's what we'll do.
okay, I second.
Okay, call the vote.
Commissioner Mike Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Randy Downs,
Yes.
Commissioner Dale Gold,
Yes.
Vice Chair David Rhines.
Yes. Okay, any old business, any new business? No?
Move to adjourn.
Second that.
Do we have to take a vote for adjournment?
Aye.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.